You'll remember at the beginning of this year, we were talking to Houstonians about how optimistic they were about 1974. Here is one fellow we left out.
I'm in the oil business, and it will be optimistic for us because we stay very busy right now, and oil companies are looking over all of the old prospects they used to have and going over anything they can find.
Little did that man know that 1974 would be the first year in decades that the oil companies could not find enough oil to keep up with the demand. Their troubles quickly became our troubles. You'll remember that late in '73, the Arabs shut off our oil. The embargo put a noose around our necks that tightened with every passing month.
It hadn't just happened overnight. The stage for this energy drama had been set long ago. Back in the days when a part of the American dream was to own a big car. In those days, we spoke of our freedom to move around. Specifically, we meant our freedom to drive around, to drive in as big a car as we could afford. And why not? Gas was cheap and plentiful. And as we drove around in our big cars, who could have known that we were literally running out of gas? Over the years, production of U.S. oil was dropping, and dependence on foreign oil was growing. As we entered the 1970s, American refiners were reaching further and further around the world to quench our thirst for oil. And as we entered the 70s, we learned for the first time that oil could be an effective political weapon. In 1973, the Arabs, who were upset with our support of the Israelis, cut off the oil. And when they turned it back on, the oil that once cost us pennies a barrel now cost us a whole lot more. 1973, the year of long gas lines, of stations shut down, and of higher prices. 73 was the year that many of us turned to smaller cars, learning what the Europeans had known for a long time. Our energy story might have had a brighter ending here to say that we all learned a lesson in 73, that the fear of shortages and of higher prices caused us to conserve fuel. But it was easy to slip back into old patterns, and for the next few years, we paid a little more each month for gasoline, and we continued wasting it. We were still importing record amounts of oil and paying more and more for it. OPEC became a household word, and every time the OPEC nations raised oil prices, we paid. It was a delicate balance, easily upset. 6 years later, it was upset. 1979, and again it seemed to happen almost overnight. Long lines at the gas pumps, higher prices. A world away from Houston and Iran, the oil was cut off. But it's a small world these days. The cutoff hurt. And an unwieldy and complex government plan for allocating fuel hurt even more. Houstonians seemed particularly enraged, sitting here in our long gas lines in our town whose very name means oil and freedom to move around. It seemed unreal. A lot of other Americans thought it was all pretty unreal too. For in the summer of '79, a Gallup poll found that more than 3/4 of all Americans polled felt that the oil crisis of '79 was a hoax, a plot to allow the oil companies to raise their prices.
It's a ridiculous situation. You got a situation where 34 major oil companies are playing footsie with the federal government and getting anything they want, and 170,000 dealers and millions of Americans are getting screwed as a result.
The oil companies defended themselves by blaming the shortage on the Iranians, and above all on the government for not deregulating fuel prices. The oil companies reasoned that if prices were free to seek their own level, then the higher prices which would naturally occur would encourage conservation, and that extra profits could be used to find more oil and to expand refining capacity. To help get us out of this mess, President Carter came up with a plan. Sunday night, July 9th, 1979, Houston and the world were watching.
Beginning this moment, this nation will never use more foreign oil than we did in 1977. Never.
Carter's plan was ambitious: to cut imports, to make us energy self-sufficient, to develop synthetic fuels, and to tax the oil companies mightily. The oil industry hated his ideas. Even people who had no interest in the oil industry one way or the other question if such lofty goals can ever be reached before we run out of fuel. But reachable or not, the government and the oil industry agreed to one thing: time was running out, and so was our energy.
Is that all there is? Is that all there is? If that's all there is, my friends, then let's keep dancing. Let's break out the booze and have a ball. If that's all